This is According to Callus. This is episode 224. That's right, 224 in order. We are going to be tackling still the Republican Party of Texas's platform for 2022. I apologize for the absence this last week. My bronchitis decided to double down on me, and it is just now that my voice is starting to feel and sound halfway decent. So to the best of my ability, I am going to knock out the end of the platform today and spread it out over this next week so that we can move on to other things. There is certainly a lot that's been going on, and one particular event, actually it's related to others, but one particular event is going to necessitate a special episode that will likely release on Sunday because it's directly relevant to all the things that are going on. And quite frankly, if we're not paying attention, we're going to miss these things. And they're important to the grassroots and to the local community to understand just exactly what is going on and what is at play. So without further ado, here we go. Criminal and civil justice. Family law. Equal parenting. We support legislation providing equal and consistent parenting, possession, and access for every child when both parents are fit, willing, and able, and it is in the best interest of the child. That would be the equal parenting plank that we have been doing battle royale over for the last 2 terms. Not sure what the challenge is here. Only that there is a vested interest by certain segments of lawyers within the party that don't want to lose their cash cow. Of course, that would be strictly my opinion on the matter, and since this is According to Callus, and the entirety of every episode is bar none, actually, based strictly on my interpretation and understanding of events, and if I should, by some way, shape, or form, get something wrong, factually, you can let me know in the comments. You can share with me what I've got wrong. But I try to the best of my ability to be very clear that this is a direct fact. This is my understanding of what's at play here, and define it as my opinion because, well, quite frankly, it's my show and that's what I do. Child Protective Services. We support reforming or replacing the Child Protective Services, and we ask for any legislation that would support due process and family court proceedings, oversight of the system, and a jury determining the outcome of any case if requested by either party. Law enforcement. The abortion homicide exemption. Physical homicide exemption. The Texas Penal Code section 19.06 should be modified to apply only to non-elective abortions, such as required to save the life of the mother. For those of you out there that are losing your mind over the fact that Roe versus Wade was correctly retired and it is now going back to the states where it should have never left, this would answer the majority of your concerns. Capital punishment. Properly applied capital punishment is legitimate and should be reasonably swift while respecting all due process. Once again, when I was a young man, I was all for capital punishment. I thought that, if somebody's convicted, we just need to make it instantaneous. But having become older and wiser, I see that the system is used and abused. And quite frankly, there are a lot of people that, while maybe are dirtbags, were convicted with bad data, bad evidence, or quite frankly, they just were never given a fair trial. So the old adage is better 1,000 men go free than one man be locked up that was not guilty. Right? I'm sorry. 1,000 guilty men go free so that one innocent man is not locked up. I would say even more so, one innocent man facing the death penalty. But our system is just so messed up. I just have zero confidence in that. Police, firefighters, and other first responders appreciation. We express gratitude and appreciation for police officers, firefighters, and other first responders. We support the exercise of their duties. To that end, we support proper funding and robust training programs and provide them with intensive, comprehensive physical and academic training in the classroom and on the ground. We also support funding for proper mental health care and encouragement for officers. I assume that should be all first responders. And just a minor aside, we should keep in mind that these people are in fact second responders. You should be your own first responder. You are already there, therefore you are first. However, it's not as sexy to call them second responders, but that's the reality of the situation, and that is not to take anything away from those people that really, truly sacrifice on our behalf. Let's go on. I guess this is Plank 177 now. Mental health support backup. We support trained mental health personnel backup being provided to peace officers at all hours, day or night, in order to serve the public. Okay. Sounds a little expensive, but maybe that's for everybody's benefit. Also prevents that proverbial innocent person being dead. Protection from arbitrary stops. The Texas legislature ought to enact legislation to protect Texans from arbitrary stops, detentions, and arrests for only openly carrying a firearm. Well, that's interesting. Open carry is legal. Concealed carry is legal. There are some minor restrictions, or maybe not so minor, depending on how you feel about that. But nobody should be harassed for carrying a firearm. That's just not Texas. Protection from arbitrary stops, which we've already covered. No-knock raids. We call upon the Texas legislature to improve the no-knock warrant procedures to protect law enforcement and the community. Once again, no-knock raids were dreamed up for the protection of law enforcement, to make sure that they could get all the evidence that was suddenly disappeared. But the reality is, in my opinion, this has been used and abused, and it needs to be reined in. Are there specific instances where maybe this is the best answer? Sure. But we need to be tight about it. And for those of you out there in blue that are now freaking out, yeah, I know there are procedures in place, but much like everything else, we know those procedures are abused and ignored whenever it's convenient for certain segments of our society, notwithstanding your protestations. Okay, on to opposing riots. Apparently, we need to say we oppose riots, vandalism, looting, and condemn such conduct. We advocate that each and every criminal and act should be dealt with immediate arrest, imprisonment, and prosecution. Well, it would be arrest, prosecution, conviction, then imprisonment, but okay. To the fullest extent of the law, those who have been found guilty of causing injury or destruction of property shall be held financially responsible for restitution, including the withholding of any state-provided benefits or entitlements, if applicable. Yeah. Still waiting to see how that's going to play out, since we still have people locked up. That's right. We have people locked up for trespassing for over a year. We have other people that have gotten multiple years for the audacity to going into a public building, wandering around, and taking pictures. Hey, but that was the insurrection and the most terrifying thing in our entire lives. Never mind, most of us went through 9/11. But the Summer of Love of 2020, no, nobody cared about that. In fact, the vice president was actively soliciting funds to get those people out on bail. Talk about a double standard. Court accountability. We support the right to inform the jurors, the common law power to judge the law, jury nullification, as well as the evidence, and vote on the verdict according to their conscience. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution defines the role of the judges. We support the Congress limiting the powers of the U.S. federal court by invoking Article 3, Section 2, and Clause 2 by legislating exemptions and creating regulations to limit the cases for which a U.S. federal court should have jurisdiction. We believe district attorneys have a duty to seek justice for victims of all forms of crime and oppose policies that would systematically decline to prosecute crimes. Wow. So apparently the Republican Party of Texas agrees with me now that jury nullification is the right and proper role of anybody on a jury. Good to know. And all those Republican judges that run and then run away from this issue, I think this is an appropriate question to ask them. If you're a Republican judge running for election, what is your thought on plank number 182 in the Republican Party platform? What do you think? Frivolous lawsuits. We support further reform to discourage frivolous lawsuits. We oppose use of class action lawsuits. Any law that allows government agencies to collect lawyer fees from the plaintiff when they win, but not have to pay the plaintiff fees when they lose. Yeah, again, the rules for thee and the rules for we. Like everything else in our society, the people that write the rules are the ones that benefit. And that's not you and I in 90% of those times. Bail reform, we call upon the Texas legislature to ensure bail in Texas based only on the person's danger to society, risk of flight, and criminal history. Okay, sounds good. Victims of human trafficking, we call upon the Texas legislature to amend the Code of Criminal Procedure to allow victims of human trafficking to have convictions within the previous 5 years for prostitution offenses set aside if they receive these convictions as a direct result of being trafficked. So in other words, if somebody's forced to be a prostitute because they were trafficked, we're going to expunge them of that crime that they committed because they did it under duress. That sounds good. I like that. Just thought I'd put that out there. Rule of law enforcement. We support the rule of law enforcement of laws and maintain order of the republic. We call for independent prosecutorial authority to prosecute crimes and maintain orders such as sedition, riot, official oppression, election integrity to be delegated to statewide officers such as the Attorney General. We oppose the December 2021 opinion of the Criminal Court of Appeals in State versus Stevens, which judicial activism encouraged the court to reconsider this ill-advised opinion. We call on the legislature to ensure that election crimes will be promptly prosecuted, even in counties with progressive district attorneys. So, for those of you that didn't understand what I just read, this is about the AG losing his authority to independently prosecute people who cheat in elections. And that would be the Criminal Court of Appeals that took that away from him for reasons I don't quite comprehend because it doesn't seem to make sense. And the local DAs in the dirty counties, a.k.a. Dallas, Harris, and perhaps Tarrant and Bear and Harris, or I'm sorry, Bexar. Bear? No, it is Bear. Sorry. Whatever the heck, Austin. I can forget there. But in any case, all those dirty counties, they get away with it, and nobody cares, and nobody can do anything about it, except perhaps the state AG or somebody in his office. But the Criminal Court of Appeals decided that, no, he doesn't have the authority, even though it kind of does. Obscenity exemption. We urge to repeal the Texas Penal Code obscenity exemption, that be 43.24, which allows children access to harmful, explicit, pornographic materials under the guise of education. Materials. The state of Texas should repeal all Texas laws based on the fraudulent research by Alfred Kinsey. For those of you who are unaware, that's right. Schools in their districts are exempted from the obscenity law because they can put porn or other obscene materials in front of your children because they can claim it's for education. Well, I'm sorry. Just like I'm not excited about some cross-dressing dude being in front of a 5-year-old reading some kind of book, I'm even less enthusiastic about anybody taking my child as a minor and putting explicit material in front of them in order to, quote-unquote, teach them educational things about sex or orientation or whatever else. Not enthusiastic about it at all. Now, are there specific issues where perhaps parents don't do the job that they ought to do? Yes, but the state is not the right arm to fix it. In fact, the state is a blunt mallet which creates far more problems than they ever solve, and this would be one of them. Just saying. And if you doubt me, just look to the local school districts. That would be McKinney ISD, Frisco ISD, Allen ISD, Prosper ISD, not to mention any number of local ISDs in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that put this filth in front of your children and try and tell you it's good for them. Now, when I was a teenager, if we were confronted with a pedophile that we knew about, it's probably certain that one or more of us would have dealt with that in a very tactile way. So said pedophile would not be able to do that again. But now apparently our school districts protect and celebrate this as just another form of diversity. Just saying. But apparently the Republican Party of the state of Texas ain't playing. All right, civil asset forfeiture, the next one. This is, I guess, plank 189. We call upon Texas legislature to abolish civil asset forfeiture independently or in partnership with federal authorities and to ensure private property only be forfeited upon a criminal conviction. You know, I got to say, I spoke in favor of this, and I was excited that we were able to push this through. And the reason why we had to add the partnership with federal authorities is that is a giant loophole that they use to abuse us, we the people. Now, unfortunately, nothing will likely happen in the legislature because, well, yeah, they have a vested interest to use and abuse their power. But we've at least got the right verbiage or the correct mindset put forth in the Republican Party of Texas. All right. Government surveillance. We oppose all forms of warrantless government surveillance of the United States citizens and businesses. That's great. Unfortunately, Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft all do that for them now. Location and data privacy. We call upon the Texas legislature to protect citizens' current and historic technologically available location data by requiring a warrant based for probable cause or legally obtained subpoena. Again, they get this stuff very easily by our own actions. You know, I'm guilty of this too. I have an Apple iPhone SE and I love it, but it tracks everything I do. And if they want it bad enough, they can very easily get it. Not that I necessarily hide anything I do, because quite frankly, I'm a boring middle-aged white guy that only likes his wife for that kind of stuff. And there's not much to see here. And oh, by the way, I didn't kill myself. Just think I need to remind people every once in a while of that. Hate crimes. We can urge the complete repeal of hate crime laws, since Apple laws are currently in effect to punish criminal behavior towards other persons. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Merge officiation. We believe religious institutions have the freedom to recognize and perform only those marriages that are consistent with their doctrine. You know, this is interesting because we did bring this up, and I actually suggested that we change the plank that the state should not require licensing from the state. And if there's no requirement from a license from the state, they don't interfere with people's marriages. But I lost that. Maybe it was a step too far, but that's okay. Raise the age. We call upon the Texas legislature to raise the age of criminal responsibility from 17 to 18 years. Now, I know this is on behalf of actually law enforcement in some degrees here, and it does make sense to be consistent. The only problem is this is an outgrowth of you do the crime, you should do the time. When you got 15 and 16-year-olds doing things that are adult matter, they should be punished like adults, which is what the goal of that was. I actually don't disagree with the idea here, but there should be a way to override that. Warrant validity. The flyers of search warrants should be held responsible, or filers of search warrants should be held responsible for the validity of the information used to obtain the warrants. Yeah, and that goes to that pesky thing where they have, I don't know, the ability to not be responsible for things they do. They say it's limited, but it's really not. I mean, if you get it limited and you yourself get to determine whether or not I'm just going to set that aside because it's a sticky wicket. Pandemic business fines. We support prohibiting the fines and imprisonment of business owners for operating businesses during pandemics, and calls for the legislature to pass these protections into law. Again, I don't even know why we need to do this, other than the fact that our governor, who's up for re-election, by the way, completely abused his power for a period of time, and now apparently promises never to do it again. Sounds like something a couple of kings might have said. I'm just saying. All right, fraudulent lien filings. We support legislation to reduce the fraud by requiring the identity of the debtor on all liens to be confirmed prior to filing by at least 3 methods, including but not necessarily limited to state ID, county records, and personal contact. So basically, you just can't go willy-nilly put liens on people. That is also a part of the lawfare program that certain people use, and it's probably good that we rein that in. Just saying. Because, it's bad enough when government abuses power, but then when other individuals go out there and abuse that same power through the use of government, it's kind of like swatting. We always lose. Well, that is the end of the criminal justice section. This is the end of episode 224. And if you found this, I don't know, somewhat entertaining, useful, educational, informative, or if you just like the sound of my voice, I would ask you, share the podcast, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends in person. Hey, make your comments known. If I got something wrong in your opinion, put it in the comments. I mean, that would often offer a lot of fodder for later on, because we can go over and talk about these things. You know, as good as I am, or I think I am, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. And I know this. And from time to time, I even misspeak. And if I'm particularly out of it, I can say the wrong thing entirely, which is a little bit different than misspeaking, in case you're wondering. Well, my friends, this is According to Callus. I will be back for the State Affairs section, and I will see you on the other side.